They were already seated when she reached the table. Fingers traced lines on paper. Pages were turned and turned back again. Their voices stayed low, the way people speak when they think no one else should hear. She stood at the edge of the room and waited. No one looked up. The stack of documents shifted hands without her name being mentioned. She could tell the decisions were about her, not because anyone said so, but because of the pauses. Because of the way the papers were gathered closer when she moved a step forward. She set down the glass she had been carrying and walked back into the kitchen. The light above the counter hummed, steady and thin. She opened the bottom drawer and reached past folded towels until her fingers touched paper. The bank statement was still there. The corners were soft from being handled too many times. The date was still visible. The amount she believed she had lost for them all those years ago remained circled in pen. She placed it on the table and smoothed it flat. For decades, this single page had stood in for an explanation no one ever asked her to give. From the other room, a chair scraped the floor. Someone laughed quietly. The sound carried into the kitchen and faded. She looked at the numbers again. That night had returned to her in pieces over the years. A short conversation. A decision made too quickly. The silence that followed when the money didn't come back. No one had asked how it had happened. No one had questioned who had arranged it. And she had never corrected the version that settled in the family as fact. The paper on the table wasn't proof to anyone else. It was only a reminder of the weight she had chosen to carry alone. She folded the statement once, then unfolded it. In the other room, one of the voices lowered again. Her name was still not spoken. She picked up the paper and walked back toward the doorway. The documents on the table shifted when she came into view. A folder was closed too quickly to be casual. She stopped short of the table. No one looked up right away. One of the folders remained half closed, as if it had been meant to disappear. She didn't ask what they were discussing. She asked if there was anything she needed to sign. A hand slid the folder closer to the center of the table. Someone said it was already taken care of. The words were neutral. The movement wasn't. She nodded once and turned back toward the kitchen. The paper in her hand felt thinner than it had moments before. She placed it beside the sink, weighed down by a mug to keep it from curling. Later, when the voices in the other room softened into a quiet rhythm, she went to the hallway closet. The box on the top shelf had not been opened in years. Dust lifted when she pulled it forward. Inside were old envelopes, receipts, a folded contract she did not remember signing. The company name on the header was one she hadn't seen since that night. She carried the box back to the table. The contract lay beside the bank statement now. The dates were close enough to notice, the amounts were not. She compared the numbers slowly. What had been taken from her account did not match what the contract claimed had been invested. The difference was small, but it was there. Small enough to be ignored. Clear enough to raise a question she had never allowed herself to form. From the doorway, one of the children asked if she needed help. The question came too late to sound casual. She asked where the company name had come from. The room quieted. A pause settled over the table, the kind that carries weight without sound. Someone said it had been part of the arrangement back then. The words were familiar. The certainty wasn't. She set the contract down and slid it back across the table. The paper stopped just short of the closed folder. Later that night, when the house emptied into sleep, she went to the garage. The old filing cabinet still stuck on the second drawer. She pulled until it opened with a dull sound. There were more copies there, older than she remembered. One receipt carried a signature she recognized without reading the name. It belonged to someone who had lived in the house at the time, someone who had spoken for her when the decision was made. She did not take the receipt with her. She left it where it was and closed the drawer. The next morning, she called the number printed on the contract header. It rang long enough to sound unused before someone answered. The voice on the other end did not remember her name. It remembered the account. The transfer, the voice said, had not come directly from her. It had been routed through another family member's account first. She thanked the voice and ended the call. At the table, the papers were still arranged as they had been the night before. She placed the bank statement on top of the stack, not as proof, but as presence. No one spoke at first. When one of them finally looked up, the silence did not break. It shifted. The silence at the table did not ask questions. It waited. She didn't explain the papers. She only left them where they could be seen. One of the children reached for the bank statement, then stopped. The paper remained between them untouched. She said the transfer had not come from her account alone. She said the numbers did not match what had been told to her. No one contradicted her. No one corrected her either. A chair shifted back. Someone stood, then sat again. The name on the receipt from the garage did not need to be spoken. It was already known in the room. The person it belonged to had not been mentioned in years. The absence had been treated as distance, not as a choice. She said that night had been carried with her longer than any of them knew. She said she had believed the loss was hers to explain. The words did not rise. They stayed level with the table. One of the children said they had been told the money was handled through family. They said they had never asked which part of the family that meant. She nodded. It was not an answer. It was an acknowledgement of how easily a story settles when no one presses on it. The phone lay on the table where she had set it earlier. The call log still showed the number she had dialed. She turned the screen so they could see it, not as evidence meant to accuse, as a detail meant to exist. The room adjusted around the fact. Later, when the name was finally spoken, it did not come with anger. It came with the recognition that the silence had been shared. The explanation that followed was incomplete. It accounted for the decision. It did not account for the years that had passed without correction. She listened without interruption. When the words ended, she folded the bank statement along its old crease. The paper had been handled enough to remember its shape. She did not ask for anything back. She did not ask for an apology in words. One of the children reached for her hand. The gesture came after years of distance measured in small, practical ways. She let her hand remain where it was. Later that night, the papers were gathered and put away. The table was cleared without ceremony. She returned the folded statement to the drawer. Not because it no longer mattered, but because it no longer stood alone. The light above the kitchen table was turned off. In the dark, the house settled into a quiet that did not erase what had been said.